the substance of this and the nuclear submarines decision, which of course is a monumental one. It's going to take a long, long while, a lot to be achieved before we see it come to fruition. But there is one of the British Astute-class nuclear submarines in Perth at the moment, in Western Australian waters. You've been on the vessel this week. Tell us about that vessel. I understand it's smaller than the American nuclear vessel, so it might be the one that we end up going with, or some version of it.
That's right. I was hosted aboard an Astute-class submarine, which is alongside at HMAS Stirling fleet-based west here in WA. Very warm welcome from the crew, very open and glad to have us on board. I think the first thing I'll say is it's bigger than the Collins class, obviously. I could stand at full height and not stoop, but certainly submarines sort of look the same and smell the same once you're down under the casing, but a very significant capability, and amazing to hear some of what they've been doing from the captain of the ship. I was surprised at how qualified they are. The captain was an astrophysicist, the executive officer was a geophysicist, very intellectually gifted people, and it was, I think, a reminder to us that we need to really start growing our human capability here in Australia, and our education sector is a critical part of getting our country ready for nuclear submarines as part of AUKUS.
Well, it's a very important and very timely visit because it underscores the point that these vessels are out there and being involved in these sort of visits already. There are naval exercises involving the American Navy off Western Australia at the moment. And your point about the qualifications is key too. When I was doing my nuclear energy documentary, the people involved in nuclear research in Australia were telling me that because it's so sophisticated and it touches so many areas of technology, nuclear science, if you don't have a nuclear capability in a country like ours, a developed country, you'll get left behind the development, the technology of other countries.
That's right. We're not just talking about nuclear submarines. There's a lot of intellectual property that's going to be shared with us, which has implications not just for the military, but for industry, our education sector, even our health sector. You need health services that can support nuclear submarines as well, given the radiological nature of nuclear power. So very, very significant implications for us, and exciting too, because with that brings opportunities for young Australians. And we need to really capture the imagination of primary and secondary students and start directing them towards the opportunities that will come with this arrangement.
Now, I know some of our submariners have been doing time on US and perhaps UK nuclear-powered submarines already. Is there any potential for us to get lease a vessel that perhaps is beyond requirements from either of those countries before we take delivery of our own new nuclear-powered submarines to try and bridge that gap?
There is a submarine task force which has already commenced. They have 18 months to look at all these sorts of questions. Everything is on the table, and that's their job. They've got to explore every option here, and they'll eliminate options based on whether they're feasible or not. So I don't want to second guess that process. It's important that we uphold the integrity of it, and suffice to say there are a lot of fine minds looking at how we build our nuclear submarine capability, but also offset the time period between their delivery. And of course, an important part of this will be the Enhanced Force Posture Initiative, where we're going to see more US and UK military visits to Australia. We're going to see more fighters, bombers, tankers, logistic hubs from the United States. We're going to see more naval visits, both surface and subsurface. And of course, the $1 billion announcement last week from the federal government invested right here in Western Australia at HMAS Stirling is to get our port there serviceable so that we can have more ships and submarines alongside our coastline.
Just a couple of other issues. The Victorian government is taking a stand at the China International Import Expo in China starting this weekend. The other states and the federal government not involved. Is Victoria doing the wrong thing here, giving Beijing perhaps a PR win?
You'd remember, of course, Chris, that we had to introduce federal legislation. The Morrison government introduced federal legislation to strike down the Victorian government's, the Daniel Andrews government's Belt Road Initiative strategic memorandum with the Chinese government. So Dan Andrews and his team have a habit for acting unilaterally and sometimes at odds with the Commonwealth and national interests. So we won't be there. They're doing their thing. And of course, the Commonwealth Government will always have the lead on foreign and defence policy.
Is it unhelpful?
I don't know enough about it. Suffice to say, I wouldn't be surprised if the Dan Andrews government was working at cross purposes to the Morrison government.